I am making a Pokemon type tier list. I figured, hey, might as well. I have a few strong opinions on some types. Some of them might be a little controversial. I think I'm going to start with the Psychic type. Now, honestly, the Psychic type is not good. It actually kind of sucks. It's really bad. So, let's start off with what it can hit for super effective. Fighting and Poison. Now, those aren't incredibly valuable types to hit for super effective. I mean, Fighting's a decent type, and Poison is a relatively solid defensive type. But in all honesty, you're not seeing Fighting or Poison too often. And since Poison's a defensive type, it's not something that is necessarily like an offensive threat. It doesn't hit Psychic or Steel for very effective, and Steel is very good defensive typing, and has no effect on Dark types. Now that means Psychic types can just kind of get walled by Dark types, and since Psychic types are often special attackers, that means their only real coverage for Dark is, I want to say it was Focus Blast, because a lot of them don't get Aurora Sphere. And that's not very good. Now, it's weak to Bug, Ghost, and Dark. Bug, not a big deal. A lot of things resist Bug. No one cares. Ghost and Dark are both very good types, so it's not good to be weak to both of them. I'm going to have to start by putting Psychic in... I think I'm going to put it in the F tier. It's not a good type at all. Now, speaking of the Bug type, it's another type that's considered really bad. So, Bug type isn't actually that bad defensively. It resists Grass, Fighting, and Ground. Now, as I said earlier, Fighting isn't the most valuable thing to resist. Neither is Grass, but the ground resistance is really nice. So it's not horrible in that aspect. It's weak to Fire, Flying, and Rock, which aren't the best types to be weak to, but it's definitely manageable. Where it really lacks is its offensive stat, or matchups. It's not very good at hitting Fire, Fighting, Poison, Flying, Ghost, Steel, and Fairy. Now, a lot of those are very valuable types to hit, so it does suck that it can't hit those. Now, it can hit Grass and Dark types for super effective. It can technically hit Psychic, but who cares? So it's not horrible, but it's not good. I think I'm going to go ahead and put Bug in the D tier. It's not a great typing, but it's not the worst. It really lacks offensively, but it's okay defensively, and having Stab on your U-turn is very valuable. I think next I should cover Poison, another type that is considered to be not very good. So Poison is super effective against Grass and Fairy. Those are decent types to be super effective to. Fairy especially. Fairy is considered a very good typing, and it's good to be super effective against it. Now, it's not the best offensively, as it can't hit Poison, Ground, Rock, or Ghost for super effective, and it cannot hit Steel at all. Now, Steel having an immunity against Poison is pretty big. Defensively, it makes up for that, with its resistance to Grass, Fighting, Poison, Bug, and Fairy. Now, a lot of these typings aren't the most valuable, with Bug, Poison, and Fighting not being the best ones to resist, but the Fairy resistance is pretty good, and only two weaknesses in Ground and Psychic. Psychic, as stated, isn't a fantastic type. Ground is a really good typing, though. So I would go ahead and put Poison as definitely better than Bug, but I think it still goes in the D tier just because these aren't the best types to resist. Some of them are very good types to resist, but not all, honestly. I think it's about time I cover Stellar type. Stellar type, I think, is simply just the worst typing. It's exclusive to Terrestrialization. It doesn't actually change your typing, it just gives you Stab on all of your moves for one time, if I remember that correctly. I could be wrong. Let me see if this... No, it doesn't have Stellar typing on this website. It's not very good. There's only a few Pokemon that will ever run Stellar. That is Superior and Chien-Pao. Those are the only ones that come to mind. It's not good. I think that's about it for Stellar. Let's try Rock now. Rock is a horrible defensive typing. It's weak to water, grass, fighting, ground, and steel. Now, all of those aren't the best types to be weak to, and it resists normal, fire, poison, and flying. Fire is a good one to resist, but normal, poison, and flying aren't the most valuable. Now, offensively, it is quite decent. It can hit fire super effectively. Ice isn't the best to hit super effectively, because a lot of things can hit for super effective. Flying is a good one to hit for super effective, and bug isn't the best. Now, it is walled by fighting, ground, and steel. Ground and steel specifically are bad ones, so I'm going to put rock below poison. It's not a very good typing. Next, since we just discussed flying, I think it is a good one to cover. Now, flying is super effective against grass, fighting, and bug, and also resists those types. Now, fighting can be a bit offensive. I know I've kind of been talking bad about fighting. It's not horrible. It's a mediocre type, I would say. Grass is usually a supportive type. It's a lot more defensive. It's not usually exerting much offensive threat. And bug isn't the most useful thing to hit for super effective. Now, unfortunately, what it is weak to are 3 offensive typings. It's weak to electric and ice, which electric and ice coverage is the best coverage in the game. Nothing resists it. And it is weak to rock, but rock isn't fantastic typing. The only time you would really see rock is as a rock being viable is a dual typing. Like Hisuian Arcanine is a good use of the rock type. I'm going to go ahead and put flying in D tier. Flying's a type that I really like, but I cannot justify putting it that high just because of its strong weaknesses to electric and ice. It is immune to ground, which actually is very valuable, so I think I'm going to move it up to C tier. Low C tier, though. It is weak to some common offensive types, but its immunity to another common offensive type is very useful. I've discussed fighting a lot. I think it's time to mention fighting. Now, okay, fighting's actually a better type than I thought it was. Super effective against normal, ice, rock, dark, and steel. Now, hitting dark and steel for super effective is very valuable, but it's not very effective against poison, flying, psychic, bug, and fairy. Now, having that weakness to fairy isn't ideal. It's kind of double-edged with its offensive spread. It's very good against some valuable typings like dark and steel, but it fails to hit some other valuable typings like fairy and ghost. It's a very middling type, I would say. I think it's worth putting in B tier and leaving it there. It's mediocre. Actually, it might even be C tier. I think I'm going to move it down to C tier. Yeah, I feel good about that. It's an alright typing. It does some things really well. It does some things not very well. Now is worth covering the ghost type. Ghost is a type I consider to be very good. It is super effective against psychic and ghost, which being super effective against ghost is valuable. Psychic not so much. It's only resisted by one type, which is dark, and it doesn't hit normal types. Now, defensively, it's not too bad. It's immune to both normal and fighting, which aren't the most common offensive typings by a long shot, but it's still nice to have those immunities. Poison and bug are resisted, and its only weaknesses are ghost and dark. That's solid. There's not much on either side, which makes it a fairly solid neutral type. I really like ghost. I think it's a very good typing. I'm going to put it in A tier. I think a lot of its stats are valuable. And when it comes to dual typing, it is very valuable. Let's go for normal. Normal is very weird. It is resisted by rock and steel, and ghost is immune to it. But it's immune to ghost, and its only weakness is fighting. It's okay. I think it's worth putting D tier. It's not ideal. Has some valuable traits, but it the fact that it doesn't hit anything for super effective doesn't help it at all. I want to go back and compare it to poison. Yeah, I think it's a little better than poison, but it's not the most valuable. Now let's cover ice. Ice is a very bad defensive typing. It only resists ice types, and it's weak to fire, fighting, rock, and steel. Those aren't the best types to be weak to. They're not the worst, but they're very far from the best. Now, where it excels is its offense. It is strong against grass, ground, flying, and dragon. Dragon especially being a standout type to be strong against. Now, it is not good into fire, water, other ice types, and steel types. Now, the ice type here, resisting ice, isn't a big deal because ice is a very bad defensive typing. You can usually have coverage to hit other ice types. Water also isn't a big deal because of the move Freeze Dry. Freeze Dry is an ice type move that is super effective against other water types. So, I think ice is a very solid typing. Offensively, on the right Pokemon, it can do a lot. I think another good one to cover is Electric, because of the Bolt Beam coverage I discussed earlier. Electric is another very solid offensive typing, super effective against water and flying, and the only things that resist it are electric, grass, and dragon, and ground is immune. Ground being immune isn't great, but it's good enough. Ground is the only thing that hits electric for super effective, so only having one weakness is pretty big. Now, it does resist flying and steel, which are alright types to resist, I would say. It's a solid typing. I think I'll put it under ice. It's good. I just feel that it leaves a bit to be desired with its offense. I wish it hit more types for super effective, but it is fairly solid, especially when combined with ice. Ground is another good one to discuss. Very good offensive typing. Super effective against fire, electric, poison, rock, and steel. Not very effective against grass and bug, and flying is immune to it. Now, as far as its defenses, immune to electric, very good. Resists poison and rock, not the best types to resist, and being weak to water, grass, and ice isn't the best, but ground is still a very good typing. I think I'm going to put it in A tier, above Ghost. This offensive spread is very good. I might even move it up to S tier. Do I want to move it there? No, I'll keep it in A tier. Let's discuss Steel. Steel is the best defensive typing in the game, resisting normal, grass, ice, flying, psychic, bug, rock, dragon, steel, and fairy. It is only weak to fire, fighting, and ground, which aren't the best types to be weak to, but it more than makes up for it with its resistances. It is also immune to poison types. Offensively, it's alright. It's super effective against ice, rock, and fairy. Fairy being the big one there. And it's not very effective against fire, water, electric, and steel. All in all, good type. I would say it's probably deserving of S tier. Very good very good defensively. Good enough offensively. Next, I want to cover the fairy typing. Now, fairy is super effective against fighting, dragon, and dark. Good types to be super effective against. Fairy types are resisted by fire, poison, and steel. Those are not the best types to be resisted by, but it's manageable. Now, being immune to dragon is huge. Being resistant to fighting, bug, and dark, pretty good, and being weak to poison and steel isn't the worst. Poison and steel are both defensive typings, so you're not going to see a lot of offense in that aspect. I think fairy is S tier. I don't know if I want to put it above or below steel. I think I'll put it below steel. I want to cover Dark next. Dark is a really good typing. Is super effective against Psychic and Ghost, which Psychic not a huge type to be super effective against. And it is weak to Fighting Bug and Fairy. Being weak to U-Turn, not the best. Fairy, very good typing. And Fighting is alright. So, defensively and offensively, it's okay. Where it really makes up for it is its additional abilities. Being Dark means that it is immune to Prankster. Prankster is a very solid ability that turns non-damaging moves into priority moves. That makes Dark a very good defensive type to have against Prankster Pokemon. Now it is also immune to Psychic. That pretty much walls Psy-Spam archetypes, which are Psychic Terrain, Psychic type Pokemon. It's very good at countering that stuff. I would put it in the A tier above Ghost. I think Dragon is the next one to take a look at. Dragon is super effective against Dragon. So it hits a lot of things for neutral, but not a lot of things for super effective. It's not very good against Steel, and Fairy is immune to it. So offensively, it leaves a bit to be desired. Defensively is where I believe it shines. It is resistant to Fire, Water, Electric, and Grass. Pretty solid types to be resistant to. Its weaknesses aren't the best, Ice being a very good offensive typing. Weak to itself is manageable, and weak to Fairy isn't ideal. But I would still say Dragon is a solid type. I would even put it in A tier. Now, Fire, Water, and Grass are left. I'm going to go with Grass first. Grass has a lot of ups and downs. Super effective against Water, Ground, and Rock. Some solid types to be super effective against, but being resisted by Fire, Grass, Poison, Flying, Bug, Dragon, and Steel, it's not going to be very good offensively. Now, defensively, it has some things going for it. Resistant to Water, Electric, Grass, and Ground. Good types to resist, but being weak to Fire, Ice, Poison, Flying, and Bug, some of these types are not very good, but it's still a decent bit of weaknesses. Now, where Grass does excel is its immunity to Spores and a lot of, I want to say it's immune to Powder moves as well. Yeah, it's immune to Powder moves and immune to Rage Powder, which is also a Powder move. So in that aspect, it's very good. I would put it in B tier. I think Water is the next good one to cover. Water is a very solid defensive typing, resistant to Fire, Water, Ice, and Steel, and only weak to Electric and Grass. Now, offensively, it's alright. Hits Fire, Ground, and Rock for super effective, pretty good, and doesn't hit Water, Grass, or Dragon. Very good defensive type. I would say it is A tier, and Fire is the last one. Fire, surprisingly good defensive type. It's resistant to Fire, Grass, Ice, Bug, Steel, and Fairy, and only weak to Water, Ground, and Rock. Water and Ground aren't the best to be weak to, but I think Rock is manageable. Now, offensively, it's good against Grass, Ice, Bug, and Steel. Grass and Steel are the only real ones to worry about here. Being able to hit Steel for super effective, which is a very solid defensive type, is valuable. And not being able to hit Fire, Water, Rock, or Dragon for super effective is fine. I would put it below Water, but it is still a solid type. This is my type tier list. You can agree or disagree. I won't stop you. I'm not the best at Pokemon. I just kind of went off my instinct. If I went back through this, I'd probably change a few things. I can't think of what that would be off the top of my head, but I think the bottom of the list I'm more confident in. Psychic is just not a good typing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.